Hello and welcome to this week's interview here on Viking.TV with me, Anne Diamond. Now, all of this week, we're sharing with you the Music and Museums concert series that have been proudly sponsored by Viking and which have featured some of the top orchestras and performers in the entire world. So right now, I'm privileged to introduce you to the conductor of this extraordinary series. And he is someone who's taken music into some very exciting and unusual locations, and so made the music even more special and certainly the occasion more spectacular and memorable. For instance, one of the concerts just recently performed and sponsored by Viking was at London's famous Science Museum, a place that obviously celebrates scientists who have literally changed the way we view our world, like Stephen Hawking, who of course wrote the global bestseller A Brief History of Time, even though most of his readers can't get past the first couple of chapters. Well, my guest today, when invited to conduct the concert, included a modern composition in the programme which explores the whole concept of time and music. It's called In C, and you'll see the conductor, as you'd expect, beating time, but in a very unusual way. Fascinating, and we'll revisit that performance again in a few minutes. So let's meet my guest today, the renowned orchestral conductor and composer, Oliver Zeffman. Oliver, hello and welcome.
Hello, thanks for having me.
It's lovely to have you. We're joining you from your home in London.
Indeed.
At the moment, so you must be in between concerts, I guess.
Yeah, I'm actually also, we've been very busy with these films coming out for you. But yes, in between things.
And aren't they spectacular? Music and Museums. When you were first approached to ask if you wanted to take part, I suppose, and with such exciting locations, what was your reaction?
I mean, it's my series. I put it together, so.
It's your idea.
Yeah.
Oh wow! Tell us why then. What sort of challenges does it present you musically to go into a location that probably hasn't been built for music?
Indeed. I mean, I think that's the point, particularly. If you're going to be filming some concerts, over the last few years from 2020 when there was lockdown, a lot of orchestras, rightly so, wanted to make lots of film content. But I feel sometimes, not to necessarily criticize my colleagues, but the things sound beautiful, amazing music, amazing musicians, but they don't necessarily look that interesting. Some concert halls are nicer than others, but ultimately it's an empty room. More or less it's wooden, some empty seats. Whereas obviously museums have some of the most engaging, beautiful architecture and art anywhere in the world. And if you're going to film something, a good portion of that is the setting. So that was part of the reason that I put together this Music Museum series, because I was interested in creating some really engaging films as well.
Well, congratulations not only on the performances, but on the idea, because I think it's fantastic. Makes it visually interesting as well.
Yeah, I agree.
That piece, I mentioned that piece in C, was modern, but actually it was written in 1964.
Not that modern, but it was very much, I think it's widely seen as the first piece of minimalism. So the idea for the concept of the Science Museum, as you said, it was tied in or linked to the Stephen Hawking exhibition the Science Museum had. And Stephen Hawking, a lot of his research was to do with how time and space worked. And so the idea for the concert was to program 4 different composers that explored time in their music in different ways. So the first piece was an arrangement by George Benjamin of some of the Bach Arte Fugue. And obviously Bach fugues work by having different cells that expanded, change, put over each other, this kind of thing, changing time in different ways.
Yeah.
Then we did a piece by Harrison Birtwistle, who also uses time in very different and very interesting ways in his compositions. Then we had a new commission, actually, by a fantastic young British composer called William Marsey, again, looking at time in different ways. And then this in C. And the way this piece in C works is you have, I can't remember off the top of my head, but something like 64 different musical cells that are, between 3 notes, 5 notes, 10 notes. And the idea is every single player in the orchestra plays each one as many times or as few times as they want, and they kind of move on. And the idea is to never kind of get too many cells out with each other. But so every single performance of the piece is different. There's no two performances the same. And it's a very different way of making music to, let's say, I don't know, a Beethoven symphony, where obviously you play what is on the page in the order it comes.
How do you even rehearse that with an orchestra?
Well, I think in some ways it's more about kind of feeling an atmosphere than, you can't say you were rushing or you played this bit in the wrong place, because there is no way of being in the wrong place or rushing, more or less. So it's much more about getting the right atmosphere and working on having the same kind of dynamics in the right place in the piece. So, conducting that piece is, as you'll see from the video, it's not so much conducting, it's more, well, I guess this is what conducting is in some ways, but it's more creating the feeling at the right times with the right kind of dynamics and the right speeds-ish.
Yeah, I mean, we saw you beating time there. Do you always keep the same time, or are there instances where you speed things up, move things along, quieten things down?
A little bit in that piece, a little bit, but more or less it's the same kind of thing.
Yeah, and not only must it be difficult to rehearse and then rehearse again, because you'll be different every time, do you explain it to the audience first, what it is trying to do and what it's trying to say?
I didn't explain it in words, but there was a program that I think explained, the context of the piece and what it was, and the context of the pieces in relation to the exhibition at the Science Museum.
Did you? You must have gone along to the Science Museum and seen the exhibition yourself, did you?
Yes, of course. Yeah.
And of course, so as you say, Stephen Hawking was all about time and space and the bending of time and all the rest of it. And of course, there's a lot of wonderful things in the Science Museum that celebrate Hawking, and bits of his own work, his own blackboard, things like that. Yes.
So in the video from the Science Museum, you'll see there are some bits from the exhibition kind of interpolated amongst the musicians playing, because also if you're making a film of some musicians playing, to make a more engaging film, you don't just want to look at musicians for an hour because they look the same playing. And you're making a film. A film is a film. It's not a recording of a concert. And so, for extra context and visual stimulation, etc. I mean, I didn't direct the films. I'd be a terrible filmmaker, but I think Stuart did a good job.
Are you a scientist or mathematician yourself? I mean, was there an inherent interest in that sort of thing?
No, I mean, I guess I was a relatively competent mathematician scientist at school, but beyond that, not particularly. I have read A Brief History of Time, and actually I met.
You got to the end?
No, yeah, I did. I met Stephen Hawking because my cousin was, I mean, this was obviously many years ago, but was a researcher with him. So he was at my cousin's wedding, but I must have been about 8 years old. So quite a long time ago. Oh,
that's wonderful though, isn't it? Touched that part of that life. Yeah. Did you always want to be a conductor when you were little?
No, I don't think so. I know some musicians have these stories. I was 4 years old and I heard this symphony. I knew, great. I don't think that necessarily was what happened with me. I played the violin when I was a kid. I was in youth orchestras. I thought, conductor.
Well, hang on, you had some youth orchestras. I mean,
I was in some youth orchestras.
Yeah, because you decided that it's not. I know, as you say, you played the violin. You could have worked very, very hard at trying to become a solo violinist or something, but you were so determined to be a conductor, you decided to set up your own orchestra.
Well, so when I was, I guess I was about 16, and I was in an orchestra called the London School Symphony Orchestra, which was fun, but I thought, it looks a bit more fun conducting than sitting, here playing the violin, and I guess with some kind of ego involved, you can't be a conductor without, zero ego. And I had some lessons with the guy that ran the orchestra. But ultimately, it's all very well, waving your hands in front of a mirror and thinking you look amazing, but it doesn't actually do anything. Mm-hmm. And if you want to, let's say, play the violin, you can buy a violin or borrow a violin and practice. But if you want to practice conducting, you need some people to conduct. Yeah. And if you're 16, nobody says, hey, come conduct the LSO. It obviously doesn't work like that. So, I got some friends from this youth orchestra from school together, and we did some concerts, and they were terrible, and I was terrible, but that's, how you start out and work with musicians. And that's how I started conducting.
How old were you when you did that?
Conducting the very first concert, I was 16, but the next one, but then there was one, and then the next one was the next year when I was 17. Then we did maybe 3 that year, and started off like this.
Yeah, and you say it was terrible to start with, but it takes a lot of courage, doesn't it, to actually go and forge on to do the next one and the next one?
Yeah, I guess courage, or Yeah, something like this, maybe.
And how do you raise the money? Because even young orchestral players need money, or you need money to take them up to the Edinburgh Festival or something like that.
Well, the very first few concerts, we were all 15, 16, 17, so we weren't getting paid, and I was lucky my parents could afford to rent a church in Highgate for a few £100s or something, so they were relatively inexpensive. And then the very first concert, I think, where we needed to raise a bit of money, I did this we did a tour to the Edinburgh Fringe Festival in 2012, I think, which was my first university. I thought, let's do an opera, let's do a tour to Edinburgh Fringe. I think that costs, I don't know, something like maybe £5,000 to £10,000, and you just go and ask people, and then some of them say yes, and then you have the money, basically.
As I said, it takes a bit of courage as well. But I know you're very proud of the orchestra that you ultimately set off, which is the Melos Sinfonia.
Sure. I mean, it doesn't exist anymore, but between 2011 was the very first concert, but that was just between 2014 and 2018 or so, we did maybe 5 or 6 concerts a year, and the idea was to give young musicians, everybody in the orchestra between those few years was students at conservatoires or just graduated or just getting jobs in some of the big orchestras, and the idea was to perform engaging repertoire that perhaps the players wouldn't otherwise get performed. So good experience for them, good chance to play with like-minded colleagues. We did some interesting tours. We did some tours to Russia. I studied for a little while in Russia, so I made some good connections there. We did a few operas, so it was exciting.
Well, let's come back to the music and museums and look at one of the other amazing locations you performed in as part of that series, the Cutty Sark. Now, for anyone watching who doesn't know London very well and maybe has never visited the Cutty Sark, A, what is it? And B, I didn't know there was a concert hall there.
Well, no, it's not a concert hall. I mean, that's kind of, I guess, the beauty of this series. So the Cutty Sark is a ship, I think it was a tea clipper that was launched in the late 1800s. I don't remember the exact date anymore, but about maybe 10 years ago or so, it's in a dry dock in London. It's a ship museum. I think there was a fire, and so they kind of redesigned how the ship would be presented, and they built this amazing space underneath the ship where you have the hull kind of hanging over you. You can see it in the picture here, and you can.
It's like the hull of the ship is the roof of the concert hall or that space.
Yeah, so it's this space underneath the ship where you have the hull and there's this big kind of glass ceiling over it, and it's an incredible space. And actually, the acoustics are really amazing. I think this was the very first concert, certainly the first concert with any sizable number of people they'd done there, and it was incredibly atmospheric and very beautiful and very inspiring to perform there. And obviously, a nice link with Viking because sea and ships.
To the sea. So, how do you go about choosing the music you're going to put into that concert?
Sure.
I mean, of course, some of it's sea related. The piece we're about to play isn't really, is it? It's the Tallis Fantasia.
Well,
Williams, but the rest of it was very much sea related.
Sure. So there were 3 pieces in the programme. So there was a piece called Sea Pictures by Grace Williams, who is a Welsh composer. And so I have to say, I hadn't really come across her. And some friend of mine recommended I listened to this piece and got to know music. And it's really beautiful and very evocative of the sea, as you'd hope from a piece called Sea Sketches, but really in an amazing way. Then we did a piece by Elgar called Sea Pictures, with Dame Sarah Connolly. And it's, again, an incredible piece of music. And then the Tallis Fantasia theme by Thomas Tallis, by Vaughan Williams' Fantasia theme by Thomas Tallis. And although it's not about the sea per se, you can kind of imagine in those kind of tunes, being on the coast and looking out and kind of the English pastoral. But also Thomas Tallis is buried in a church, not even 100 metres from the Cutty Sark. So there's a nice link there as well.
Oh, absolutely. We'll have a little listen to it then. Here is the Fantasia on the theme of Thomas Tallis by Vaughan Williams, played at the Cutty Sark. I mean, a lot of people will recognise that very, very famous piece of music. Probably, maybe not so many will know the Sea Pictures,
Yeah.
Elgar Sea Pictures. We're going to play a moment in a clip from Where the Corals Lie, but a wonderful mezzo-soprano guest singer.
She's one of the greatest singers in the world, and it's a great privilege to be able to work with her. I'm not so young anymore, but she's obviously had a far greater career than I have. Worked with far bigger conductors and far more famous orchestras. So it was fantastic. As I said, a real privilege to be able to perform and record that work with her.
I mean, you can't help talking to you and emphasising the fact that you are still very young to have had such an amazing career thus far. Is it ever a problem if you're working with a solo performer who is much older than you and, as you say, more experienced? Does it ever give you a bad time?
Not that often, to be honest. I tend to find, well, look, one, if you're there because you think you have something to say, whether what you have to say is interesting or not, I guess is a separate question. But if you don't think you have something to say and something to add, then you shouldn't be there in the first place, frankly. Otherwise, you're wasting everybody's time. And I've tended to find that on the whole, most soloists and orchestras are there and prepared to work. And if you have something interesting to say, they're interested in working on that with you. Occasionally in my career so far, there are a few people that can be a little bit difficult, but that's your job, is to negotiate that and navigate that.
Absolutely, I suppose you're the leader of the team to a certain extent, I suppose, from that point of view. Dame Sarah and any of the other performers, when they walked in and saw that Cutty Sark area for the first time, what was their reaction?
It was incredible. They all thought it was just an amazing space to play in, and an amazing. It's very different from, obviously, playing in a beautiful concert hall is a nice thing to do, but it's something you do, if you're Dame Sarah, every day or most days a week. Whereas this is a different kind of thing,
isn't it?
Yeah.
For most of you, probably. Yeah.
I know.
Let's listen to a clip now. We've got Dame Sarah Connolly now singing Where Corals Lie under Oliver's baton. Wonderful, wonderful voice, isn't it? And it's so evocative. Well, there you are all together, enjoying playing music all together in this fantastic location. But how did you, for instance, get on during lockdown?
Well, like everybody most people, everybody in the arts, certainly, I had everything cancelled, as you do. But I'm not very good at doing nothing. I would have gone crazy, I think. And so I wanted to, I thought about what could I do that would be valid or feasible when nobody can meet, but also, still artistically interesting to some degree, because I think quite quickly most people were uninterested in, say, Zoom streams of, some singers on different screens sing something. It was, nice for a bit for morale, but doesn't really do anything compelling, let's say. And I ended up putting together this opera film where I commissioned eight composers to write 8 new pieces of music that were together made this opera film. So people like Thomas Adès and Nicola Mouly and Duyan and Helen Grime, lots of, frankly, very famous composers with some great singers. Dame Sarah was one of them, which is how I got to know her originally. And we partnered with Apple. It was all shot on iPhones and filmed, all over the world.
So all of these people were in various isolated positions in their own lockdowns, but they were working together or on.
Well, so there were eight pieces, let's say, that made up this overall 45 or so minute film. And so the way it worked was each composer obviously composed a piece, and then by the time we ended up recording, it was kind of July, and things were a little bit more relaxed. You could do a few things. So the orchestra recorded their part in the studio with me, and then each singer effectively got like I guess their own karaoke backing track that they would play in their ear when they were recording and being filmed. And for these singers who were in the UK, so that was Dame Sarah in Gloucestershire, I think it was, Sophie Bevan in Oxford, Yeson Davis, who was in London, and Toby Spencer was also in London. Me, the director, the sound guy, and director's assistant would go to their houses, basically, and film and record. And the point is the sound and the video you hear, but particularly the sound, it's from that space. Because I don't know if you've ever seen, there are a few films of operas, let's say, rather than a recording of an opera, I don't know, like La Bohème or something, but the sound's very obviously recorded in a studio, and it sounds like it. And I think there's a very weird mismatch, whereas the sound you hear is a sound from Toby Spencer's bath or from Yeston outside or whatever. And you can't see me, but I'm behind the door conducting, so they're in time. And so those are the ones in the UK. And then there were also film sessions, and so the places outside the UK had like a local film and sound crew. And so recordings in Kherson, in Mexico City, in San Diego, in Moscow, in Budapest, in Shanghai, all over the place.
And is there a binding theme to it? Does it tell a story?
Well, so at the time it was obviously nobody could do anything, so it was called 8 Songs from Isolation, and it wasn't specifically about, I'd say, the pandemic or anything, but it was about the different ideas of isolation, how people have kind of coped with that, I guess. And the arc of the 8, I guess, goes from towards, let's say, hopeful at the end. So it ends with a piece by Nico Muhly that's kind of looking to the future.
And how did you get Apple involved?
I asked them.
Well, you rang them up.
Frankly.
And in the end, you say you recorded it on iPhones.
So not the audio, but all the film was shot on an iPhone. And it looks fantastic, I have to say. I don't think you would know. I mean, obviously it says all shot on an iPhone, but I don't think you would have known if it didn't say that.
No, the quality is amazing, isn't it? But that has to be sort of the first opera ever filmed on an iPhone.
Yes, I think it was.
I don't know whether it's the only one anymore.
I don't know, but it really worked. And I think it's maybe it's arrogant to say this, or I would say this, but I think it's it's a really beautiful piece, and it's quite a compelling visual thing to watch.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, in fact, I will in a minute, what's the weirdest piece you've ever conducted or found yourself possibly composing? But I just wanted to remind everybody watching at the moment of what's going on still at the Science Museum with you ticking time back in C. It's still going, and it's still evolving and changing. Let's have a little look back at what's still going on at the Science Museum. Now, I'm in no way poking fun at that, because there are all sorts of different modernizations of music. Some people can understand it and other people don't. But that one goes on for quite a long time. And I'm just wondering where you all got the stamina from.
Well, I think this is
really standing there.
The piece, because it's, I said these, I can't remember, I think maybe 64 or 50 something cells. The piece can last however long it lasts. So, sometimes I think they've been performances that last several hours, whereas I think our one was about 35, 40 minutes. I'd say it felt a lot longer than it was. It turned out to be just doing this for 40 minutes. But that's the piece. And so that's what we played. Well,
yes, and that is a tremendous responsibility for you, because you've got to feel when is the right time to maybe, and how do you draw it to an end?
Well, when everybody gets to the last of the cells and everybody's back in unison again, it kind of gestures people to fade out and fade out and fade out, and then it just ends.
Is that the weirdest piece you've ever conducted, or have you done anything?
Yeah, it's fun to do things that are different. Like if you, I love Beethoven, I love Mozart, but if you only do Beethoven and Mozart, it's not, variety is great. I guess it's the only piece I conducted where I didn't actually have to conduct, something like that. But I do all kinds of stuff, all kinds of pieces. I did this enormous, it's not weird, but Burt Whistle's music is very hard. So this Burt Whistle piece in this program, it's in some ways it's both hard. It's very tricky to conduct and to play, but it's also it makes an incredible impression, but in some ways very hard to kind of penetrate. But it's about kind of atmosphere impression. This piece, Tragoidia, which is in the Science Museum, but last January, actually in Russia, just before this horrible thing with the war kicked off, I did this enormous piece by what was called The Triumph of Time in Yekaterinburg, which is kind of crazy and incredibly powerful and not weird, but very different, let's say.
Yeah. Well, I tell you what, for the more traditionals watching at the moment, let's go to another concert then, which was at the British Library. Again, an absolutely stunning location. I mean, when you went there and thought we could actually do a concert here, it must have almost blown your mind because it just looks so wonderful.
Yeah, well, certainly. So with the British Library, they had an exhibition about Beethoven. And in the exhibition, there was, I think, the manuscripts for the Ninth Symphony, the Choral Fantasy, and the Sixth Symphony. So we decided to do the Sixth Symphony and the Choral Fantasy. And I thought it'd be really exciting, as you could have seen just from the photo that just was, to have the choir all up the staircase and in the balcony, because there's no point, I think, performing in spaces that aren't concert halls if you don't really use a space for what it is. And so if you can have a choir, it would look way more dramatic, both live and on film, to have them spread out on these balconies, kind of overlooking the audience and the orchestra. And that was the point, and it was really fun.
Well, here's a little of what you played there from the Pastoral Symphony and the Academy of St. Martin's in the Fields. When you first played there, when you first rehearsed there, was there any tweaking you had to do that would help the sort of sound, or did you just sort of go with it? Because the sound there sounds amazing.
Well, thank you. There isn't tweaking in the sense that you can't tweak the space. To sound, certainly in the 2-hour rehearsals we have in the space, there's nothing you can really do. But certainly, with the orchestra and how the sound the orchestra make, and the balance between the choir and the players and the orchestra internally is very different to the rehearsal we're in. So a good part of rehearsal is balancing that as we can to the space.
Amazing place, isn't it? Absolutely. Yeah. But even more amazing, we're going to play tomorrow here on Viking TV. We're going to play the concert at the V&A, the Victoria and Albert Museum in London. And this is a complete knockout visually as well as the sound, of course. Again, you look at the hall there that you were playing in. I mean, that is just unbelievable, isn't it? It must have been a knockout in every direction you looked.
Yeah. Well, these are Raphael's paintings, so it's it's pretty incredible to perform in this space. Yeah.
And again, what music did you choose?
So the V&A had an exhibition on at the time called Fashioning Masculinities, the Art of Menswear. And so we picked a program that reflected that. And so in the exhibition, it was split into 3 sections. Undressed, overdressed, and redressed. So we had the concert match that. Sorry, this is a slightly long explanation, but you asked. So for the overdressed section, we did a piece by Lully called Le Bourgeois Gentilhomme. So, the bourgeois gentleman, very overdressed, that kind of thing. Actually, I think in the play, the Molière play, he's the son of a cloth merchant, the Bourgeois Gentilhomme. So that's kind of a nice link. Then for the redress section, there's a very beautiful piece by an American composer called Caroline Shaw, a piece called Entr'acte. And her piece is a reimagining of a traditional minuet and trio form. And the redress section of the exhibition is about reimagining of traditional tailoring. And then for the undress section, in the exhibition of the V&A, they had a cast of the Apollo Belvedere. And so we did Apollo by Stravinsky. And also because it's a neoclassical work, it's musically undressed, because that's the point of neoclassicism. And then we also did some music with Jakub Orlinsky, who's an amazing countertenor. And obviously a countertenor is a man, but has a voice that is much higher. And so that also plays with ideas of masculinity, that kind of thing. So this is how we came with that program.
And we've got to play a clip of him singing as well, because what an incredible voice he's got. Jakub, is it Orlinsky?
Jakub Joseph Orlinsky.
Singing Cara Sposa from Rinaldo with the Academy of St. Martin in the Fields again. So here Rinaldo is mourning the loss of his beloved wife, and it tears at your heartstrings. Under those paintings as well, I mean, there's just it's a sumptuous meal for the senses, isn't it?
Yes, and I guess that's the point of both the live performances, but also the film. It looks hopefully as good as it sounds. That's the idea of this.
Work with him. What did he think of the location?
Oh, he loved it. I was very pleased. He's probably one of, if not the most in-demand singer in the world. So he flew into London for 2 days. And he made space in his diary for that, and I was very pleased and very grateful. But he's fantastic. He's very nice, so it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I gather that even Handel thought that was possibly the most beautiful piece of music he'd ever written, and I'm sure there are lots of people who would agree. But do you have favourites
of Handel's music, or just general
any music?
It's
too big, isn't it?
No, but I mean, I love Sibelius a lot. I love Tchaikovsky. I love Debussy. I mean, there's so much great stuff. I really like conducting opera a lot as well. I think probably my, I don't know, 4 or 5 favorite operas are, actually, if we can do this if you want. What are your favorite operas? And then I'll tell you mine.
Oh, I'm such a heathen. I mean, I love Bohème.
It's a fantastic opera, so it's good.
Yeah, it's one of the first ones I ever knew. But then there are other more obscure ones that I like simply because I love the singer.
Yeah.
Or maybe one aria, and then that gets you into others.
Give me one example.
No, can't remember. I could almost sing it, but I can't remember. I'll think of it in a minute. I'll look it up. But Lucia Lammermoor, and I love Handel. I love that sort of music as well. But it's very difficult to ask me for a favourite because I don't know as much as you. But you.
Well, so probably my favourite operas are Otello by Verdi. It's amazing and so dramatic and so powerful. And when Otello comes, I'm not going to sing it to you because it'd be terrible. But when he enters the stage, Esultate, and the end of the opera, it's just so moving. I love Yevgeny Onegin by Tchaikovsky. Bluebird's Castle as well is probably one of my favorite operas. And also this amazing opera by George Benjamin called Written on Skin, which was...
Oh, I heard about that, but I don't know anything about it, but it sounds...
It's
Written on the Skin.
Down a limb and say it's the best opera of the 21st century. So it was premiered in 2012. And probably it's certainly, account for taste. It's certainly it's probably the most commercially successful opera written in the last, 23 years now, in that lots of, not all, but most new operas they get commissioned by a group of commissions. They get done maybe once or twice. This has had something like 80 different productions over the last 10 years. It's done constantly, and because it's such an amazing, incredible, powerful piece of music, piece of theatre, really.
Yes, it's the drama as well, isn't it? Yeah. But I gather that we British, I'm not quite sure about Americans as well. We view opera in a very different way from the way they do in certain other countries, where it's much more what families do. It's part of their theatrical experience, whereas we consider opera as only for posh people.
Yeah, you're right, and it's frankly it's disappointing in some ways because it's very much not. It's music and it's drama and it's theatre, and in the same way with TV or films, you can like certain films and not like other films. There are plenty of operas I don't like because I think they're boring, but that doesn't make opera as a whole boring. And sometimes when people say, I went to this opera, it wasn't really for me, opera's not for me. I think, okay, well, I saw this TV show. Let's say it was the only TV show I ever saw, and then to say, oh well, TV is not for me, rubbish. Or I listened to a piece of music I didn't like, whatever piece of music might be, whether that's classical, hip hop, pop, whatever it might, and then say, oh, well, music's not for me. It's really frustrating, and frankly as well, it's this kind of self-perpetuation. We don't just get into politics now, but it's this kind of thing where people like to put it up down. Did you see this thing? It was a few months ago where I think it was Rachel Reeves had gone to Glyndebourne, and Dominic Raab in the comments said some slightly pissy comment about oh, you think you labour for the people and you went to Glyndebourne. So what?
I know, absolutely
ridiculous.
But that's interesting, Glyndebourne itself, because it brings us back to the idea of location being important.
Yeah.
Because I remember saying to my family, I've got all boys, saying, let's go and look at Swan Lake. And they said, oh, no, I'm interested in ballet. And I said, but this will be fantastic because it was in the Albert Hall, Royal Albert Hall in London, and it was like a theatre in the round. We were looking down upon a lake, and it was just so brilliantly done. It was a spectacle.
Yeah, exactly. Particularly,
they were knocked out by the fact that so many of the tunes they already knew.
Yeah, well, this is the thing, and particularly, well, I think this is one of the reasons I love opera so much is that when it works, it's everything. It really works. You've got music, you've got drama, you've got visual, you've got spectacle, and this is why it can be so thrilling when it works, but also, frankly, why it can be so rubbish when it doesn't work, because you've got so many different bits that have to really work. So even if something is played amazingly, if the staging is rubbish, then it's a terrible evening, and vice versa. There's so much that has to go right that when it doesn't, it's a disappointment. When it does, it's nothing like it.
So having done these music and museum concerts, which, I mean, in my mind work brilliantly because of everything you've just said, what is your next challenge? Are you already brewing up a new idea?
Where's new ideas? I mean, actually, been having some initial conversations around doing a series 2, because we did 4 museums, and there are many more museums in London, in the UK, around the world, so that could be an option. And actually, the next big project I'm putting together, is a big concert for Pride actually this summer in the Barbican, because amazingly in classical music, if you look at the history of classical music, lots of the top composers and performers, or most interesting, exciting composers and performers from the past and the present day are from the LGBTQ plus community. I know Tchaikovsky, Poulenc, Chopin, Britten, Barber, so many. But classical music, no major opera house, concert hall, orchestra anywhere in the UK or Europe has ever done a concert for Pride. It frankly just feels long overdue. I don't really know why nobody's done it. So I'm doing one this summer at the Barbican on the 7th of July. If you're watching, come along.
Great t-shirts out. Absolutely. It sounds brilliant. Well, we'll let you get on. But thank you so much for sharing that. And I must say the performances are brilliant. They're such fun to watch as well as to listen to. And I guess that's what you were after.
That is, yeah, that was the point. Well, thanks very much for interviewing me and for...
We look forward to hearing about your next project. Yeah, keep in touch, won't you?
All right. Thanks so much.
Thank you. And so there you are, another wonderful, but let me just remind you that that's not just the man behind the conducting, but that will be every day this week has been a concert, and tomorrow will be as well. The Victoria and Albert Museum one is tomorrow. So let me just remind you, if you're watching, the concerts are stupendous, and it would have been lovely to have been there, but now you can sit at home and savour every moment here on Viking TV. Like I said, the next one is tomorrow. But of course, you can also flick back to any day this week and watch them at your leisure at any time. Just to reassure you, if you're concerned for Oliver's stamina in conducting that very first piece in C, here it is, ending now. Until next week, goodbye from me.